Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the IT Business Podcast. This is the weekly live show, which I have renamed the Open House Potty. I've got with me my good buddy Paco Lebron, and there will be adult beverages. So that's
not
the
every
type
day
of week
you get to drink with Mr. Marvin.
How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. Better than good, better than most, as I like to say. But it's been quite eventful the last several months for sure.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind for me already. 2025 is busy. So I did 3 moves in 4 weeks. So
Good
that
Lord.
was fun. Yep. Orlando, Tampa, Miami. So joy, and all with the ISP Windstream. And the first one went, the second one went better, and the third one finally flawless. So cutovers have been great there and all of that. So thank you all for joining us. If you are watching us live, we are streaming on all the social media, well, 3 of the social medias, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the Facebook. And already need to say hello to the Stoic himself. Brian Weiss is in with house watching us. Thank you, Brian, for hopping in. And I'm sure we'll have others pop in, hit the like button, and then leave, because that's what people seem to do.
Ain't that the truth? It's funny because we're starting to really dive into our analytics for the MSP Unplugged website. I started listening to, so I was on a long car ride, and I don't know how it came to mind, but I just remembered that Jeff Hallish, for those that are listening, who used to be the former host of the Computer Repair Podcast, and he said that he went through some guy's podcasting school, like a workshop, a programming. And I was like, man,
podcasting.
And I was like, man, who is that? So I'm Googling school, podcast, whatever. And so I find Dave Jackson. I find the information finally. And so his episode the previous week was about analytics. And so we really started diving into a lot of that. And like you said, it's funny how just so many ways that you could improve the podcast by looking at the different ways of not just who you have as your streaming hosting platform, but like all the other places. And like you said, people are just hitting likes. Some people are skipping through the intro. Like it's just like this thing, these things, but to actually see it and have it tangible, it's been very eye-opening for sure.
Well, the hardest thing I think is that, people don't understand how hard and how much work podcasting is, to not only to just look at the analytics, but to figure out, okay, if I'm going to tweak this, how much time do I have to spend to figure out what the tweak is, institute the tweak, test it, and then go back and see if it actually worked. That's time, and, then they always talk about, find out where your listeners are. Well, you got to dig into that and find out, why, and, finding out why they listen and why they don't listen, why they listen for 10 minutes and then pop out. And, sometimes, at least on the audio side, we know that if they're listening in the car and they got to their destination, they may or may not come back to the show when they get in the car the next time.
Yep.
So it is fun.
Yeah, definitely a learning process for sure. So, but yeah, no, definitely making some good headway over there, and people will see some new changes going on over there with the data we got.
All right. Well, let's do this first. Let's talk about our businesses and see if there's anything that pops up. I had an interesting little conversation today with they're not a client. They're a sometimes customer. They call whenever they need something, and they want to do just the absolute minimum so that I don't tell them that they have to sign a contract. And they're basically at the time where, are you on here? Yes, you are. Okay. I don't know what I'm watching. So what had happened was he sent an email last night, and it was a long email. So I'm like, I'm not reading this tonight. So I get in this morning, I read it, and it's a long email about the fact that over the weekend he got malware, ransomware, or something in his email, and he spent Monday and Tuesday going back and forth with App River, trying to get his email cleaned up, getting his password changed, uh, trying to figure out, he thought he had purchased the email threat protection. He was upset because something got past Microsoft Defender and all of this stuff. And so AppRiver did an analysis of his tenant. It was on hosted exchange. And,
Oh,
and so he starts asking me, he goes, I want you to check out this report and see if there's anything here that I really need to do. And I just called him and said, first of all, I can't give you any advice.
right.
And he's like, why? And I said, because times have changed. Because I'm not going to give you advice and have you do something. And if it doesn't work, then you sue me.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I'm not that kind of guy. And of course, as our good friend Brad Gross says, you're always friends until you're not.
Right.
And so I told him, I said, there's a lot of companies right now suing their IT providers for these types of situations where either they say that they'll protect them or they say that they're doing something that they're not. And I'm not going to be put in that position. And if we are to go down that route, you're signing an agreement.
Right.
And he kind of understood, but then he didn't understand.
And you haven't heard from him since.
No, I'll hear from him the next time. Because right now the only thing we do for them is their firewall.
Okay.
So the next time he has to go through this, his PCI compliance,
Mm-hmm. Got it.
all I got to do is verify, there's no ports open. And he always runs into this thing where he has to do a manual attestation at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, he always forgets that. So I always have to go in and do it. It takes about 5 minutes. He gets a bill for, $130. And why do I have to keep paying you for this? I'm like,
I mean, you're calling me.
yeah.
What do you expect?
So that was my first call today. So how have things been for you over at Prodigy Teks? And for those that don't know, because there just might be somebody who's watching this or listening, Paco is the CEO. You've got another title, but Mr. Chi-Town of Prodigy Teks, and you're also the one of the partners, managing partner or something I saw in the title of MSP Unplugged, which is also the group that puts together a podcast and TechCon Unplugged. So tell me, how's Prodigy Teks doing?
So Prodigy Teks, very interesting. There's a lot of changes and implementations that we've done in the last 5.5 months now. Just really working on I'm getting tired, Marvin. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I standardize a lot of this so that people can just do what they need to do so that I can focus on the business versus going in the field and taking care of something. So that means getting rid of legacy systems, legacy stuff, things of that nature, which goes into something like what you just mentioned. We're starting to fight with a couple clients where, we are no longer supporting BYOD devices unless they have a VPN or a Windows 365 cloud PC. And unless you have those two and those systems are fully managed by us, we're no longer going to support you. We started really diving in more into Copilot and AI in our practice and things of that nature. So Rob Scott, who we use, he was like, yeah, you got to start putting that AI policy clause in your agreements because it's starting to get more heavy as it is. So now we're getting users to re-sign their agreements. We've had word that a few of our clients are probably looking to sell. So, we were on month-to-month agreements. So now we're signing everybody with annual agreements just to, in case someone did acquire them, because in the past we've had a few get acquired. And because they were month-to-month, we kind of were left out, the remainder of that term that we would have normally worked with them on. So we're making some of those changes on that side. And they're really just pushing back. Like, I've had this Norton VPN for the past 2 years and you haven't said anything. I was like, well, yeah. And Huntress keeps locking your account out when you turn it on. You don't see the differences on that? Now, granted, we do a lot of very specific things inside of our managed Microsoft systems. So, if you're logging outside of the country and you're not working from there, we'll shut it down really quick if it's not whether it's country location or VPN. So that's been a lot of good conversations of, well, you're just trying to get $1 out of me. I was like, nope, I'm trying to make sure you don't take $1 from me. So, so that's been a lot of good conversations. So standardizing on that, again, ripping out legacy stuff like you mentioned. So I think everyone who has listened, I was a big Snap One Araknis fan, one of the last few when they were in the channel, then they left the channel, then they merged with.
Well, they got bought twice or whatever happened.
3 times, my friends.
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah.
Or let me rephrase. They merged their brands into one. They acquired another residential business. They then rebranded, got bought by another company, and then they just got acquired again. So there was no real implementation, no investment. There was a lot of technical debt with the Araknis equipment. So, my 2 co-hosts, Rick Smith and Corey Kirkendall, beat me up all the time about them being Unify fans and utilizing the Unify equipment. And so me and for those that know John Davinsky, who helps me out, he's our operations manager at Prodigy Teks. We just were very biased against the Unify brand. And I don't know what it was really. I think we just were stuck on the Edge router setup and, tinkering and things of that nature because it's all command line. So finally we decided, okay, let's test it out. And one thing led to another, and you can see here we're replacing network.
For those who are listening to the audio, Paco has behind him a stack of Unify Uni Pro, I believe, right?
Yeah, Unify U6 Pro access points, couple light switches, couple Cloud Ultra gateways. So we're starting to rip everything out from Araknis and replacing it with those.
All right. We'll have to do a show sometime on Unify. I am not a Unify user, and I will, let me just say this, and I've always said this, pick your stack, and if it works for you, go with it. And I don't have anything against Unify. I don't even think I had a prejudice against them in the past, but I was a big HP person for a while. Then I took on the Aruba stuff when they purchased that. In the beginning, I was doing Netgear switches because that's what all solo tech start with, I think, in the 90s. you go to Netgear. But I'm now in the Engenius house for switches. I've not done their routers yet. I'm still Sonic Wall with that. But I understand that Unify is working its way into the business. And Brian in the chat says, we decided to go with Engenius. Felt Unify was a bit too prosumer. And yeah, that's probably a lot of it. There's what should I say, MSP snobbery that goes on. I know that when I was talking with some people about, my Sonic Wall stuff, they were Fortify, or the FortiGate or whatever. I don't know who they are. And so,
Fortinet, what are the other ones? Palo Alto.
Yeah, Palo Alto. And of course Cisco.
Right. Yeah.
And Cisco's calling me all of a sudden. I don't know why. I've not said anything about them. I don't know what's happening, but somehow I'm on the Cisco CRM platform. That'll be interesting. I'm going to open up my beer here because my lips are,
No, I can definitely see the prosumer run, right? And I think it's a matter of, your size business, right? And I think for us, we used to do Engenius in the past, and I think for us it was, how do we get to equipment fast? How do we get to it? And then, if I recall correctly, this was a couple years ago, so things might have changed. It didn't really see everything on the network, from what I could tell. Whereas with the cloud gate,
Unify stuff,
the Engenius.
Oh, Engenius.
It couldn't see other stuff outside of its own equipment, if I recall correctly.
I've never had that issue.
No? Okay.
Oh.
So I thought this was a couple years ago when we were trying out their security device. They had just came out with their or I don't know if they call it a UTM, but their secure device, a couple of their switches, access points, things of that nature. So I think back when we tried it, we looked at it. I can't recall the reason why we didn't stay with it, because that was the initial time we were going to plan to switch from Araknis a couple years ago.
Well, I can tell you that they've done a lot of changes. One of the things that almost got me to move away from them was that they had different levels. They had their enterprise, and then they had their small office, and they had two different cloud platforms.
Yes,
Because they came out with
the one or something like that.
Yeah, and they came out with the Fit model, which was kind of their lowercase managed. And I'm like, I don't want two platforms. Now I know, and Brian's still in the chat with us, and I'll at some point get him to talk about this. They now have an entire managed cloud that will see all the Engenius devices.
Oh,
now
nice.
you got to pay for it. It's not free.
Sure.
But for the number of devices that I have, it's probably not a big deal, because obviously I can spread that cost out over all my clients. And one thing, a little tip, is start charging either a network or a location fee to kind of help do that. So now I have that fee in my invoices that basically covers, switches, firewall, and I still use the Wattbox products in there. So all of that stuff, I just charge them a monthly fee so that when I have to replace it, I don't have to worry about going to them and saying, hey, we got to replace these. I'm just telling them, look, this is the cycle. Every 3 to 5 years, we're replacing stuff. It's just part of your fee.
Yeah, we do that for because we're more of an all-inclusive per user, and we include the UTM in that licensing across a minimum of 10 to 15 users. So we use it as a leasing option as well to pay for a lot of that stuff. So
yeah. Let me go back and ask you real quick. You mentioned about the BYOD devices. Are you talking about devices that are brought into the Office network, or are you talking about anything outside that customers might be using either to remote in or anything like that?
So a lot of my clients are now remote. They don't have a lot of, the only perimeter that we're using is a SASE gateway solution to handle a lot of those things. So unless they're on that and on our stack, they can't access anything essentially. So it's more of, a client has, hey, we have 4 business devices, but the other 6 want to use their own laptop. Well, yeah, no, it doesn't, unless you're fully on what we can provide and you're not going to like what we lock down. You should probably get a device or get a cloud PC. So that's essentially what I meant by BYOD. So them trying to bring their own personal device to access work stuff.
Okay. This is all of our stuff, even though we have, I've got law firms where there are people that never come into the office, but they have to log into a server because everything is still on-prem. For my law firms, they're
Gotcha.
These guys, I don't know when their vendors are ever going to go to the cloud, but they have to have physical SQL servers and all that. So they have physical terminal servers that they have to log into. So we're using TrueGrid.
Gotcha.
So basically, I don't care what they have at home as long as they're set up with TrueGrid. But of course, I get the people that are like, something must be wrong with the server. I can't, I keep getting disconnected and stuff. But I'm like, look, there's 40 other people working just fine. So it's got to be you, your home connection or something. And they always want to blame us. And that's where I think a SASE product obviously would be great, because it can, see down to the device and check the path and all that. TrueGrid, you can't do that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of where for us, we started doing the SASE solutions. Really started for like static WAN or static IP addresses on those WAN, so we can IP restrict everything.
Right.
And a majority of our clients are construction and in the manufacturing space. We do have legal, but a lot of them have a lot of their documentation, their data inside of SharePoint. So there's very few that do have on-prem systems. And if there is, we're starting to move those to an Azure virtual desktop for some of those, or an Azure virtual server for some of those that are willing to make the payments. Nice.
All right. Well, before we transition on to something else, I do want to make another quick announcement. If you have paid attention to my Auvik versus Domotz comments, we had a show about 2 weeks ago where I did an interview with 2 MSPs, one representing Auvik, one representing Domotz. And I talked about the fact that we're going to have response videos from people at both of those companies. They have been recorded, and those are set to be premiere released tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern and 11 a.m. Eastern. Auvik will be the first, and Domotz will be the second. So if you're able to watch this or listen to this before Thursday morning, tune in for those. Those will be premiered live on YouTube and LinkedIn. We're skipping the Facebook for that. But you'll be able to see the response. And then in about another week, I'll have a final wrap-up video and give you my final thoughts and opinions about, well, I don't know if it'll be opinions, but we'll do a wrap-up of the Auvik versus Domotz there. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and real quick before we do some other stuff. Paco and I have talked, and we've talked about the fact that people have commented about TechCon Unplugged for 2025. It's been re-envisioned. And of course, you've already had one event. And for people that either don't pay attention, don't listen, or whatever, TechCon Unplugged is different this year. It is a road tour, much like ASCII or Channel Pro and stuff like that. Tell us what's happening with TechCon.
Sure. Can I swear on this show? No.
Yes, you can. Yes,
no,
you can swear. Here, swear before the graphic goes away.
Anyway, I think it's very interesting this time around, right? And so just a little bit of history behind TechCon. So for as everyone knows, TechCon Unplugged was for over the past 5 years, was an annual event that myself and Rick Smith threw over 2.5 days. It was a Friday to Sunday show. Friday to Sunday? Yeah, Friday to Saturday show.
Well, sometimes Thursday.
Well, sometimes Thursday, because it would be a quick inside pre-event. But we would normally go on to the tailor end of the week, and it would have 2.5 days or 2 days or 1.5 days, depending on which time you actually attended. And it had programming behind 3 different particular areas for an MSP, at least when I was coming up or trying to figure out how to do this, which was operational efficiency, financial literacy, and sales and marketing. And so with a little bit of cybersecurity in there as well. And so, over the years, we've gotten bigger. We've gotten a lot of great people, friends of mine, to speak, provide their input and information, and really a great time. We would usually have about anywhere between 65 to about 70 people that would show up. Our goal was always about 100. There was about 100 people when you mix in the vendors and things of that nature. But to quote one of the longtime veterans in the space, our event was felt to be a true community event. And what that meant was when you walked in and you had the conversations, the vendors that were in attendance, along with the MSPs, you didn't know who was who because the conversations were genuine. And so being able to go ahead and do that, we just kept pushing the ante more and more as the years gone on. This year, it looks a little bit different. I think just for several reasons. One, we had a vision to bring an annual event this year. It just didn't pan out to how we were looking to do it. There was some involvements, there was some commitments we were trying to kind of lock down early on. It just didn't work out. And, to be quite frank, I was tired, guys. I was tired. You know how running an event, for those that were in our community group, throwing an event is, one, a lot of funds where you got to get a lot of buy-in from people that believe in that mission and doing hope in the best for the community, right? And really stressing what your goal is and what the mission is for those MSPs. The second piece of it is there's a lot of time that Marvin can tell you on just trying to generate programming. We would meet with a content committee every week and really just dive into what do people care about right now? What is relevant? What do we want to help solve? And what, not only getting those topics, but getting people to speak on those topics, right? And that was where trying to get those two things to kind of connect sometimes didn't really work out. But we've been fortunate for the last several years. So this year, we really took inventory to figure out, all right, the events have been great, but I still feel like our attendance was low. we always said we wanted to hit to about 100, 150 attendees. We always crossed around 70 to 75. And it was always our dedicated core of members. We never really seen a lot of new faces. And so we just went back and just realized, you know what, I think, really the attraction to this event started from the podcast. And now that the podcast, has gone through different type of variations, which I mentioned earlier in the show, we are looking through some of that data. We realized that we're just, in my opinion, we wanted to provide more value to those to not only tune in, but also join to be a member of the community as well. So rather than ask all of those in the US, where we're basing this in, to come to another 2.5-day event, we decided, all right, let's go ahead and host it in each of our individual cities, which is why the cities came about. So we had Newark, Dallas, and Chicago because each of the hosts are residing in those cities. So that was one of the feedbacks that I had heard, was that the cities were nowhere near quite a bit of folks. And why were these cities selected? Well, that was, this is where we're hosted. We know our own stomping grounds. And really the goal for this tour is to attract more members like-minded like us to join our community. And so really that's what we were trying to push. Newark, we had a couple of new faces that show up and really had a great conversation. Chicago is coming up in June 20th here. And again, Dallas will be in September 12th. So we'll be around these three cities, and programming looks a little bit different as well. We went ahead and decided that instead of doing traditional programming, we'll have a pre-event. We'll have a live podcast, because a lot of people have loved to hear kind of our stories and what we're trying to talk about, depending on what that particular relevant topic could be. And then we're hosting a new thing called MSP Roundtables. So for those that have been part of the community group in the past, there were some things that we used to have called MSP Office Hours. There used to be a thing that we used to have long time ago during the Podnuts days called Tech Brothers. Can't really use that term nowadays because we want to be inclusive. But the point is that we had a group of MSPs across the US, and we got together and really dove into things that mattered with us, whether it was particular tools we're trying to determine, particular discussions, problems, AI, tool sprawl, things of that nature. But we were warranting or trying to capture that hallway magic that you would get at an event in these roundtables. So smaller attendance, smaller avenue, still have a great social at the end. But really, we were just trying to garner more community-based events. And that's why the tour looks a little bit different in programming and the way that we scheduled it this year to hopefully achieve that goal is to bring more members into the community so that we can all get together and have a great time like we do every other year.
All right. I only have one comment, and that's to talk to me before you pick the dates next year so I can make sure I'm available.
So again, because of what we were hoping to do for TechCon this year fell through, we had to act fast.
Right.
And so these dates were kind of what was available. Because for anyone who knows about throwing an event, when you're closer to the end of the year, it's harder to get the buy-in and investment from vendor partners and venues because the fall is conference season. So a lot of venues don't have the space, they don't have the time, they don't have the dates. And then I have a lot of close friends that are throwing their events. And we didn't want to collide with theirs and cause any issues in that if we did a traditional TechCon Unplugged.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you can't please everyone all the time, and don't worry about me. But I will.
We'll talk for next year.
Okay. But I will say this: that has been a conversation for the last couple of years. The number of conferences since the year of our COVID has exponentially increased, and it's hard to commit to multiple conferences. And no matter how big they are, no matter what city they're in, it's hard. I can tell you that, which is why I was always trying to commit to, if it's in Florida, I can most likely make it, because that, a 3-hour drive to Orlando or 4-hour drive to Tampa is easy. I can have my car. I don't have to pay for airfare. I'm 50-50 on IT Nation. just because of a development that's come up, which is happening the first week in June. But I am committed to PAX 8. I already had a commitment on June 20th, so that's why I cannot make TechCon this year. It's basically a reunion. I can blow it off if I want to, but
No, I mean, and that's one of the feedbacks I got, right? Is, you know, it's not a two and a half day event. It's not a 2 day event. It's a 1 day event, really 3/4 if you have the pre-event. This year, Chicago, we're having MSP Camp come out and do a MSP blueprint workshop for 3 hours before our event. So it will be a full day event this time. But I understand for those that are not, you know, in driving distance, and that's really what it was meant for those that are driving distance. It doesn't make sense to come out unless you're going to make a, you know, a vacation out of it, go to Chicago, go to any one of these cities. And really, you know, like you said, this was a different take, right? I've always wanted to do something like this for many years. And this is our first try to be able to do that. And like you mentioned, you know, I think the year before last, it was 250 events in the space. Last year was 500. I've been told now that it's 700 this year.
yes, ridiculous.
So,
I mean,
you know,
not to say that individually the events are not ridiculous. I'm just saying the number's ridiculous.
no, for
So,
sure. I just
don't
think
need-
that everyone's trying to get that market share. And so,
Yeah.
you know, right now, that was kind of our big thing too. Like, we were a community that had an event, and it turned into an event that we were trying to attract a community. And
Yeah.
so we made that switch for those that were living in again, because we had our diehards and our committed fan following, which we appreciate every last one of you. And so our hope is we can continue that moving forward.
All right. So the two events remaining this year, June 20th in Chicago, September 12th in Dallas, and I will have a link. Or if you just go to the MSP Unplugged website, there is a big old button at the top for TechCon Unplugged. It'll take you to the event page where you can sign up, and the agenda is there. I don't see a breakfast plus on there.
There will not be a breakfast plus plus as our inside joke, but there will be a lunch plus plus on there, and then we'll have a great evening social there. We will be at the for Chicago at the old McDonald's campus at the Hyatt Lodge. It's a pretty nice hotel, but really great space, great open. It'll be great for conversations and all local MSPs in the Midwest who want to come in, or if you want to fly in, that's up to you too. You still got Dallas to come in as well. But it's going to be a great time. We love having the conversations in Jersey. Really eye-opening, especially for a lot of those that are, you know, things we just didn't think of that were, though they were struggling with. We were able to provide some of that insight. So,
all right, so there you go. And just a quick note: a celebrity will be there doing a session there on MSP marketing. Tahir Hamid.
he will be there.
So
Tahir over at MSP Camp.
I have to reach out to him. I've driven by him 3 times in the last month.
Oh, really?
Last 2 months, yeah, because his office is in Lakeland, and I literally, I've got a client there, and then I drive to that client, or I'll drive to Tampa, and I've been driving right by him. But
yeah, Tahir's a good dude. He's you know, he came into the space a couple years ago, got to be a good friend of his, and we built a great rapport. He's always down for the community. I asked him for this favor. Hey, you know, would you be able to come? I know he plans his own event, ScaleCon, which is in September. And so I was like, hey, I know you're busy in that. Is there any chance I can get you or one of the guys? He's like, oh, I'm coming down myself. So I was like, so I appreciate him doing that for us. And then we will also have a pre-event for Dallas. It will be a individual's name that we've all heard and love, but I haven't gotten a topic or a title yet, or a description or a title yet. So I won't say his name just yet, but he may have dropped some news in the last couple of weeks of some actions and things that he's done. So we'll see.
all right, well, there you have it, folks. Your inside scoop on TechCon Unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of vendors and stuff, Tahir also has a podcast and an event. So there's, as we talked about, the numbers that keep growing and all of that. But I want to give some love to my sponsor here. And of course, I don't have my screen set properly. So NetAlly, cheese and crackers, what's going on here?
Hey.
Fast, reliable network testing. They are the premier partner for the show. I do have a couple of episodes coming up with them later on. It's not going to be right away, but we're going to talk about some of the products. We are working on getting their latest Link Runner 4.0, and that's another thing. I'm trying to actually get a Link Runner 4.0 versus Luke Link IQ. So I want to see if we can do a another vendor versus vendor platform, but that's going to take a lot more.
Well, I tell you what, that product line has been saved my keister quite some time. I got numerous stories. I'm trying to remember the latest one, but I just remember I plugged it in. I was like, "Yep, here's your problem," and I have a link sprinter, so I just plugged it in. I was like, "Yep, this is your problem." He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "It's dead. You ain't got nothing here. Your static's wrong."
Yeah,
Well, that can't be right. Oh yeah, we didn't load the static. We'll go ahead and do that right now.
it is amazing when you do that. And so of course I've got the Etherscope, and I don't know if you heard. Did I tell it? Yes, I did. I talked about it last week. It's part one of a 2-part story. I can't tell the rest of the story until I finish the Auvik versus Domotz series.
Got it.
But fighting with an ISP who did not understand that there was a conflict on the network conflicting with our gateway. And of course, can I switch the gateway? Yes, but then I've got to switch other things on the network and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, here it is. Here's the MAC address of your device that's conflicting with it. Oh, you can see that. I'm like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, very fun there. All right. So I'm not ready to do a hot topic yet. I don't know if you listened to the last show. I'm putting together a hot topic wheel where questions that come in and hot topics around the industry, we're going to spin the wheel, and whatever hops up, we're going to do that. But I did find something today that I thought was going to be a hot topic, but it really is more like a soft taco.
Okay.
Apparently there was a big news by PAX 8, and it started off by saying discontinuation of Microsoft 365 Premium and Office 365 E1. And we were like, what? Turns out it's actually just a discontinuation of their grant programs where they were giving away all the free licenses and stuff. But of course, people were losing their mind because Microsoft, they just increased prices if you weren't on the annual plan. And then it's like, how you're going to increase prices and then dump the products. But no, what they're doing is their premium for nonprofits. This is where it gets tricky. The grant program will be discontinued at the next renewal on or after July 1st. And then after that, existing E1 grant licenses will expire on or after March 3rd, 2026. And so nonprofits currently using the E1 grant, which previously allows up to 2,000 free seats, will need to transition to alternative licensing options as their grants expire. Basically means you have to pay.
Right.
They will continue to offer up to 300 licenses of the Microsoft 365 Business Basic at no cost, and will provide discounts of up to 75% on many products, including 365 E1. And this is all for nonprofits, folks. So all of the business stuff is pretty much going to stay the same.
And for those that don't know, this is obviously, for those that were used to the volume licensing they used to get back in the day, or even TechSoup, right? Getting perpetual licensing for nonprofits. Microsoft had a program where you can go ahead and qualify for up to 10 business premium licensing at one point, up to 300 business basic licensing, and they can leverage that grant. And so that allows those nonprofits to operate on a Microsoft infrastructure. And that's how we were able to move a lot of nonprofits from Google to Microsoft, because their assumption was, oh, Google gave us these free licenses and this $10,000 Google Ads grant, we're going to stay with Google. And for those that were used to the Microsoft infrastructure, we were able to do that move because of this grant. So,
yeah.
in case you didn't know, now you know.
So, not so hot topic, but something that people need to be aware of. If you are supporting not-for-profits, and they were getting all of the free licensing, they're going to have to start paying. But the not-for-profit pricing is pretty damn good.
Yeah, 75% off. Can't beat it.
Yeah. So, all right, my friend. Any other news out of your neck of the woods?
Other than some of the big changes that we have from on this side, really just diving into different experiences on our involvement for a lot of associations that we've been involved with versus just attending. We've been advertising more as far as on the sponsorship side. We've been or let me rephrase. OpenText has been very helpful to us on getting us marketing development funds and opportunities to really strengthen our Microsoft relationship. And so that has been a very good breath of fresh air the last several months. Shout out to my rep, Dean Reed, and really just focusing on that piece and how do we start diving more into that standardization. So being able to use those dollars into our involvement to close clients, being able to standardize and working on recurring mailbox money per se. So partnered with a master agent, Avant, for all of our ISPs, and our phone system is 8x8. So we've been working on that piece. And we've been, there was a couple years where we switched from 8x8, but 8x8 had been the phone system we used for many, many years. And I know you had a lot of tussles with them back in the day. And so for us, it's always been pretty helpful. We left them for a couple years. We went back, and now we're with our master agent. And so we've been able to flip all the clients that we wanted to from their VoIP providers to the one that we're providing, because we keep getting those phone calls, and that's just been helping, increase a little bit of the bottom line, put a little bit of piece of hands in pockets per se, and really just figure out what's this next step, which is us focusing more on our Microsoft centric focus on some things, which had a conversation with Mr. Brian Weiss over at iTech. We had a great conversation with a couple other MSPs about Microsoft Dynamics. So we'll be having him on the podcast in PAX 8 Beyond as well to talk a little bit about that.
Nice. Speaking of phone vendors, you probably didn't see a post. I posted in one of the private groups, and it was probably inappropriate for the group, but I had to put it out there anyway. We got rid of I didn't say got rid of, we moved our last client that still had a FreedomVoice account.
Oh, wow.
Done with FreedomVoice, done with GoDaddy when it comes to voice over IP phones.
What a journey that was.
That was ridiculous.
What a journey that was, for sure. I mean, it was all great in the beginning, and then things escalated very fast.
Yep. And I won't go into the story here, folks. I probably should put a link to a couple of the episodes. I know that Jason Miller, I didn't talk to him, but we communicated, and he actually still has about 20 clients on FreedomVoice.
Well, that says a lot, because he was selling VoIP like a madman and still does to this day. So the fact that he only has 20 from I don't know how many systems he probably had out there is probably pretty impressive.
Yeah, we're talking thousands of phones. And here's the thing. This client, FreedomVoice worked for them. So they're like, we don't want to move.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, stay. And what's funny is they really did not want to move, but we were doing a change to their network. And I said, you're moving.
Yeah.
So I didn't give them a choice.
Sometimes you got to do that. I mean, it's really whatever's easiest for you is going to make the client's lives easier as well, right? The point is providing that value to them. And if you can't, or you're messing around with something that you don't want to deal with or don't have the knowledge and it's slowing them down because they don't have that expertise of it, or if it's antiquated legacy debt or technical debt, it just makes sense to make that switch because you're helping them out to be more efficient.
Yeah. Well, and it just goes back to standardization as much as possible. Sometimes you can't standardize on just one product, but getting it down to two, so that if you've got, two options for VoIP, two options for firewall, two options for switches, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And that way you're not just simply, stuck in one ecosystem. If something changes in that ecosystem, then you got to, rip everything out or whatever. But
which I almost made that horrible decision back in January. There was a brand I was going to go into, tested it out. Me and John loved it. Price was good. We were going to start going all in on their business side of business. And then it was like, there's rumors on the horizon that it will be banned from the US. I was like, we're going to not move forward with this and continue our search.
All right.
So
let me do this. I have an announcement to make that is of the personal nature, and I saved it to the end because I know that a lot of people pop in and pop out. And if you're not a long-time listener of the show, and if you don't have any invested in me and my life, you won't care. But those of you that are here now, stay tuned. I will do an announcement here in just a moment. But I do want to get to Florida Man. And I was a little worried about the Florida Man stories this time around because they all happen to be around shooting or killing of animals. And if you've, looked out on the stuff today, there was a cat killed, there was a cow shot, absolutely ridiculous stuff. But I came across this story and I said, you know what? This will be the story that I will share with you today. And I actually have a video to go with it. So let me pull that up. And as I get my glasses here to read. So what you see right there is an alligator at somebody's front door. Now, this story actually goes back to last week. So I'm outside of my 72-hour window. But on May 9th, 2025, residents of the Tortuga community in Fort Myers, Florida, home of John Dubinsky, encountered an unusual visitor, a large gator with a red lawn chair stuck on its head, reportedly knocking on doors and peering into windows. It was captured on doorbell cameras and shared by the Lee County Sheriff's Office. And this was spotted around 8:30 a.m. in the morning. And it's pretty funny. A licensed Florida wildlife person was able to come out and capture the video. Turned out to be about 10 feet in length. Got him into a pickup truck, and it took 4 people to get him done there. So that is your Florida Man story. And I know that people sit here and think that, why is it that there are so many gator stories in Florida? And folks, the reason is we're taking away their environment. We are draining the Everglades and building and building. So gators got no place to go.
All the to the front door.
So I will have the full story because there's actually a whole bunch more that goes with it. I'll have the full story and the video link there for you. So your Florida Man story for today. Personal announcement, and I apologize for doing this if you are either new to the show or don't follow us much. Last week I shared real quickly that we had some family news happening while I was in Tampa for a move. My mom went into the hospital. For those of you that do not know, in 2021, my mom got diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a blood cancer, a bone cancer, I should say. She was given 3 to 5, roughly, to live. We are on year 4. She went into the hospital. I had to stay with the move and was not able to leave and go be with her Saturday morning, after she had had 2 graft surgeries, she went in for dialysis and stopped breathing for a little while, but she is back. She is well. She did get released Saturday night. And of course, I did go up Sunday and spend Mother's Day with her. And she was so adamant that this Mother's Day would not be like the last 3 Mother's Day where we just simply had dinner at the house, because she is weak, she is frail. We got her in the car and we went to Olive Garden, and she ate out like a regular person, as she would say. And that was that.
How long was that wait?
It was about 40 minutes, actually.
Oh, not bad.
It wasn't bad. So I just wanted to let people know, because I know that I had told some people, and I had shared some stuff and I wasn't posting, and people are like, what's going on? That is what is happening. However, on another note, Kim's dad, Kim is my wife, also went into the hospital about the same time. He did not fare as well. So he passed last Thursday. And that, it was a shock, but not a shock, I guess was the best way to say it. He also was having a bout with cancer for the last couple of years, seemed to be much healthier, but there was a clot that kind of crept up on him. They found a mass that they needed to operate on, but his body, his organs were not cooperating, so they only did as much as they could. And he is one of those people where he's like, I do not want to be kept alive by machines. I don't want you to do anything absolutely ridiculous. And so he sat in the hospital for about 3.5 days, just with the saline drip hanging on. We tried to get Kim up there to see him, but it just did not work out. But she is right now in Georgia. The family is gathering, and this was actually a trip that has always been planned. Every May, they would have a gathering at her brother's cabin up in the woods, which is the same place that I go when we all go up for the Christmas in the mountains. So they are there now. His remains will be traveling with my stepson on the airplane for his final voyage up to the mountains. And that is what they will be doing for the next few days. So that is what is happening with my family. So if you have gotten intermittent communication from me over the last few days, and actually probably for the next week or so, that is the reason why. And as we always talk about, family first, transparency, you guys need to know what's going on. That's what's going on. So it is what it is.
Heavy. Well, I think I speak for everyone. Condolences to Kim, and obviously our prayers are with everyone as well. So glad to hear your mom is also on the uptake as well. So yeah, it's an amazing thing when you start to, as you have older parents, like mine are in our 70s. My mom just celebrated, I should say my dad just celebrated 74 this past Monday. So, it becomes in your mind of how to prepare those, and you just are never ready. So I can only imagine, and my heart weighs heavy for you all.
Yeah, it is something. And I know a lot of us are not only in that situation, but, we've got friends now that are also creeping up there. And, we've lost a couple other MSPs over the last year unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So some of it is health, some of it is just life. I will say this, if you have some health related stuff, I would encourage you to not only listen, but participate in the podcast that Diana Giles is doing for the health of IT. There are a lot of us that could do things to live healthier and to try to make sure that we live our life as long as we can and as healthy as we can. I have another podcast that I don't really talk about because it started out as a personal podcast, but it is transforming into another show where we talk about stories. It's My Unhealthy Podcast. And we talk about just, how to live healthy and be happy. And we talk about everything from diet, exercise, mindset. We're talking about, food choices, talking about water, just the healthiness of water. I have somebody that reached out to me and wants to talk about the fluoride thing. So I don't know if that's Florida's got a fluoride battle down here. So it's just all that. But folks, listen, stay healthy, communicate with friends, and especially communicate with your family. And everybody's here to help each other out. So
it's the best thing that we can do as a community.
All right, Paco, thank you for hanging out. And I don't know if you noticed, I had my TechCon.
I see that. Well, you notice, Uncle Marvin made this shirt here. So,
So thank you very much. And folks, again, if you, head over to MSP Unplugged and check out the podcast that Paco, Rick, and
it's all good.
Support your friends, support each other in the industry. Check out TechCon Unplugged. Check out the podcast here, itbusinesspodcast.com. Check out those shows tomorrow. We'll be back. Michael George from Synchro will be joining me next week. That's going to do it, folks. I'm going to get out of here, go drink a beer, and we'll see you next time. Until then, holla.